Om Namo Bhagavate Śrī Aruṇācala Ramanaya. Namaskaram. Today I'm going to be talking about verse 3 of Aruṇācala Padigam, just to remind what Bhagavan was praying for in the previous two verses, because there's a connection. In the first verse, he prays for Uṅ-kakshi, your kakshi, that means your sight of you. That implies he's praying, what the implication is, he's praying for Swarupa darshana. He's praying to see Aruṇācala as he actually is. And obviously what Aruṇācala Swarupa is Atma-vichara. So what Aruṇācala actually is what we actually are. So that is what Bhagavan is praying for in the first verse. Why is it that we don't see ourselves or don't see Aruṇācala as it actually is because of our lack of love. We have too much desire and attachment to things other than ourselves. So that makes us unwilling to surrender ourselves completely. And without surrendering ourselves completely, we cannot know ourselves as we actually are, and therefore cannot know Aruṇācala as it actually is. So the second verse, Bhagavan is praying for that love. What is the result when we have such love, but we see Aruṇācala as it actually is? What is the result? We cease to exist as a separate individual. That is, we can know Aruṇācala only by being Aruṇācala, because so long Aruṇācala can never be. Aruṇācala is what we actually are. That can never be an object of knowledge, an object of awareness, an object of perception. We can know Aruṇācala only by being Aruṇācala. So in order to be Aruṇācala, we need to cease rising as this ego, but identifies itself as this person whom we seem to be. So the sum and substance of the prayer in the previous two verses, Bhagavan is praying for his own annihilation. That is made explicit in this verse, this third verse. So the verse is, Ireune neneum enname nanna, ene unudu arokai tralitu, ireui rindri kondrida nindrai, enkore iactionen ere, ireuni kore en kutuiraki ene veretidil edeku ingan. Irevanama Aruṇācala enamurite ekana varini duri. I'll just read the translation and I'll go through it in detail. So the translation of this verse is, by the rope of your grace pulling me, who did not come close to an intention to think of you, the Lord, you stood to kill completely. That implies you stood determined to kill me completely without leaving an iota of life. What wrong did I, this ignorant fool, do? What little obstacle now remains? Thoroughly tormenting me in this way, making half alive, is for what? Aruṇācala, who are God, fulfilling your intention, may you flourish as the one for all eternity. So if we go through it clause by clause, the first clause is Ireune neneum enname nanna. This is a relative clause that means who did not come close to an intention to think of you, the Lord. Who did not come close? That is the next word, enne, me. So the relative clause says, in the relative clause, Bhagavan is saying he didn't even come close to having any intention to think of the Lord. Nevertheless, in the next clause he says, ene unadu arokai irtu. Ene means me, unadu is your, Aruṇācala means by the rope of your grace. Etu. Etu means pulling. Pulling, drawing, attracting, dragging. So, though I had no intention to think of you, by the rope of your grace, you pulled me to yourself. That is the implication. Why did he, with what intention did Aruṇācala do this? That is answered in the next clause. Ire we indri kondrida nindrai. That means, nindrai means you stood. Kondrida means to kill or to kill completely. That is, kol is the verb to kill. So kondra is killing. Kondrida the verb kondra is a combination of two words, but what it implies is to kill completely. So you stood to kill completely. In other words, you had that determination to kill completely. How was he going to kill him? Ire we indri. That means without ire or uwe. That has a double meaning, because ire can mean what is very small or what is very slight. It can also mean God. So it has two meanings. So one meaning of ire we indri is without leaving. But literally without an iota of life. That means implies without leaving an iota of life. The other meaning is without God and soul. That implies without leaving any distinction between God and soul. So you stood determined to kill me completely in such a way that not leaving even the slightest trace. And also you stood determined to kill me without leaving even the slightest distinction between God and soul. That is, God is what we actually are. But when we rise as ego, we seemingly separate ourselves from God. But even when we seemingly separate ourselves from God, what we always actually are is God. So this distinction between God and soul is a false distinction. And in order to get rid of this false distinction, we have to destroy our separate individuality, our separate existence. So Aruṇācala has to kill us in such a way to obliterate any distinction between him and us. So that's a beautiful description. So the whole of the first sentence means, by the rope of your grace pulling me, who did not come close to an intention to think of you, the Lord, you stood to kill completely without an iota of life or without God and soul. And what that implies is, by the rope of your grace, pulling, attracting, dragging, or carrying away me, who did not come close or did not adhere to an intention to think of you, you stood determined to kill me completely without leaving even an iota of life or without leaving any distinction between God and soul. Both imply the same thing ultimately. When the soul is completely destroyed, then that distinction between God and soul is obliterated, and what remains is God alone, as Bhagavan makes clear in the final line of this verse. Then the next sentence is Enkure irchanan ere. Enkure means what's wrong. Irchanam did I do. But he describes himself as ere. Ere means a fool, an ignorant fellow, a simpleton, a poor wretch, or a helpless fellow. So in this context, it implies this ignorant fool. What wrong did this ignorant fool, do? This can be interpreted in two ways. That is, you stood determined to kill me. What wrong have I done to you that you're going to kill me? That's one way of taking it. Uh, if we take it in that way, what wrong did I do is a indirect way of saying what did I do to merit such grace that you, I mean, because when he kills us, he is thereby saving us. So what did I do to merit such grace that you stood determined to kill me? That's one way of taking it. But that's not actually the most appropriate way to take it in the context of this verse. The more appropriate way to take it, when we consider the verse as a whole, is what wrong did I do to you? Implying why are you not yet? You brought me to you with the intention to kill me. You had that clear intention. But then why haven't you completed this? Why haven't you killed me? What wrong have I done that you're hesitating to kill me? This is reminiscent of some of the verses in the early part of Aksharamlai, where Bhagavan says entering my home, you dragged me out and kept me a prisoner in the cave of your heart. And then he prays in verse 9. Ene eritippo dene kalavavidil iduvo an maya Aruṇācala. That is, if you do not, ipodu means now, if you do not now destroy me, uniting with me, is this your manliness? So there in Aksharamla, he's rebuking Aruṇācala. You brought me to you, but if you don't finish the work, if you don't kill me here, now, this very moment, is this your manliness? That is, having abducted the young girl from her home, if the Lord doesn't unite with her and make her his one with him, is that manliness? There he's rebuking Aruṇācala. Here he's making the same prayer, but in another way. What wrong have I done that you still haven't killed me? That's the implication. And he refers to himself as an ignorant fool. That is, by your grace you took pity on me, this ignorant fool, and drew me to you, determined to kill me. So why haven't you killed me? What wrong could I have done? You knew I was totally unfit, but nevertheless, you knew I had no intention even to think of you. But in spite of that, out of your infinite grace, your infinite love, you by the rope of your grace, you drew me to you, determined to kill me. So why haven't you finished this? What wrong have I done? It's in that spirit that he sings this. Then in the next sentence, he says, Ire ini kure en. That means, what little obstacle now? What it implies is, what little obstacle now prevents you fulfilling your intention? When you had this intention to kill me, what obstacle is preventing you from fulfilling your intention to kill me? And then in the next sentence, this is so beautiful how Bhagavan expresses this, because this is where he's depicting here the state of mind of the very advanced spiritual aspirant who's not yet quite attained that complete annihilation of ego. So he sings in this verse, Kutuiraki, that means, Kutuir means, Kutru means short, diminished, shrunken, defective. So Kutuir means the diminished life. It implies partially alive, half alive. Implying stranded. I'm now in this state. I'm neither dead, you've not yet killed me, but nor am I living. I'm unfit for the world because you've drawn me to you, but you haven't yet finished the task by killing me completely. So I'm stranded between life and death, so to speak. I'm neither alive nor dead. So that's what's implied by kutruir. Kutruiraki means making half alive, making only partially alive. Ene veitidel, veitidel means tormenting thoroughly. That is veitu is an adverbial participle, means killing, tormenting, or causing bodily or mental distress. And idel is a verbal noun. It's an auxiliary verb, but intensifies the meaning of whatever verb it's appended to, and which therefore implies thoroughly. So, thoroughly tormenting me. Edaku, for what? Ingan, in this manner. That is the meaning of the whole sentence is, thoroughly tormenting me in this manner, making half alive is for what? That implies, for what reason are you thoroughly tormenting me in this way, making me half alive, stranded between life and death? I'm neither alive nor dead, and this way you're tormenting me. Why is this? For what purpose is this? You started off with a good intention to destroy me completely, but having drawn me to you, now you're tormenting me in this way without you've made me unfit for the world. That is, if we take the Baba that Bhagavan has in Aksharamlai, he has entered the home of the young girl and abducted her and kept her a prisoner in the cave of his heart. But if he doesn't marry her, that is, if he doesn't complete the task by destroying her completely, he's deprived her of her worldly life, but he's not giving her the spiritual life. He's keeping her suspended between the two. So why are you tormenting me in this way? That's why I said the earlier sentence, when he says, what wrong did I do? It implies, what wrong did I do, but you haven't yet fulfilled your intention to kill me. So in the final line, he prays for that, for Aruṇācala to fulfill his intention. That is what he says in the final line is, Irevanam Aruṇācala. That's Aruṇācala who are Irevan. Irevan means God. Irevan has a very nice meaning. It implies, I think I explained it somewhere, that is, Irevan is derived from, it can be interpreted as being derived from either of two verbs. One verb is iru, which means to stay, to abide, or pierce through. And the other is ire, which means head, chief, superior, lord, or god, which is derived from ira, which means to go beyond or transcend or be preeminent. So Irevan implies that God abides in all, being omnipresent or all-pervading, yet transcends all, being infinite and therefore unlimited by and independent of all finite things. In other words, that God is both immanent and transcendent. So both the immanence of God, that is the omnipresence of God, and the transcendent nature of God, both are implied in this Tamil name for, that is, this is one of several names of terms that refer to God in Tamil. In this particular term, it implies both the transcendent nature of God and the immanent nature of God. There's another word that Bhagavan often uses to refer to God is Kadavul. Kadavul means Kadanda Ullavan, he who exists transcending. So that's particularly referring to a transcendent nature of God. But in Irevan, it implies both the transcendent nature of God and the immanent nature of God. So he describes Aruṇācala as Irevanam Aruṇācala. Aruṇācala who are God, they're all-pervading yet all-transcending God. Enam mudite. Enam mudite this enam is a word that means thought, but it also means intention. It's the same word he used earlier when he said you stood determined. Wait a second, I think he used it earlier. Sorry, I'm wrong about. Anyway, here enam implies his intention to kill. So enam mudite means fulfilling your intention, implying fulfilling your intention to annihilate me completely. Ekana varini duri. Ekana means as one. That implies ekam eva advaityam, one only without a second, the only one. It is what is implied. Vari means may you be, may you flourish, may you prosper, or may you shine, or live. And niduri means nidu means long time, or permanence, or eternity, and uri means a yuga, an eon, a long time, an age. So for long ages, implying for all eternity. So may you flourish as the only one for all eternity. That is, if you fulfill your intention of killing me, you alone remain. So may you flourish as the only one for all eternity. It's a beautiful, beautiful prayer. That is a prayer it's a prayer for bestowing your grace so that I may surrender completely to you, so that I'm destroyed completely by you, so that you alone remain as the only one. So this is the ultimate love, when we have such love for God, but we want to give ourselves entirely to God, to lose ourselves in God, so he alone remains as the only one for all eternity. So, as I say, the implication of this final line is Aruṇācala, who are the all-pervading yet all-transcending God, fulfilling your intention to annihilate me completely, may you flourish as the only one for all eternity. The one here, Ekan, implies the one who alone exists. Ekameva dvaityam, one without a second. So the meaning of the whole verse, as I said, is by the rope of your grace, pulling me, who did not come close to an intention to think of you, the Lord, you stood determined to kill without leaving an iota of life, or without leaving the distinction between God and soul. What wrong did this ignorant fool do? What little obstacle now remains? Thoroughly tormenting me in this way, making half alive, is for what? Aruṇācala, who are God, fulfilling your intention, may you flourish as the only one for all eternity. And if an explanatory paraphrase of this is, by the rope of your grace, pulling, attracting, dragging, or carrying away me, who did not come close or did not adhere to an intention to think of you, the Lord, you stood determined to kill me completely without leaving even an iota of life, or without leaving any distinction between God and soul. What wrong did I, this ignorant fool, do to you? What little obstacle now prevents you fulfilling your intention to kill me? For what reason or purpose are you thoroughly tormenting me in this way, making me half alive, stranded between life and death? Aruṇācala, who are the all-pervading yet all-transcending God, fulfilling your intention to annihilate me completely, may you flourish as the only one, the one who alone exists for all eternity. Om Namo Bhagavate Śrī Aruṇācala Ramanaya. So, does anyone have any questions about this verse?
Srini, is your question about the text? Yeah, that's correct.
Sure. Go ahead.
Hi, Michael.
Hi.
Om Namo Bhagate Śrī Ramanaya. The longing love that Bhagavan is asking, like, why are you putting me in this kind of the state between I'm not completely absorbed in Arunachala?
Yes.
I think when I relate to my daily life, like most of our spiritual aspirant life, so we always struggle between these two states. Like we are here in this body and mind, and we are doing all these worldly things, but we have that kind of final goal of merging into Arunachala.
Yes.
But there is always a void or gap of, like, no matter how much you try, no matter how much you do all these practices, it's always there is a gap that, oh, I'm
Yeah.
not able to do it, or I'm still not doing enough practice. Can you give some tips where it can take away these mind driven ideas?
Well, obviously practice is important, but why are we not practicing enough? It's ultimately due to our lack of love. It's lack of love, but it's because of our lack of love that we are not practicing enough. And we are lacking the love because we haven't practiced enough. That is the only way to cultivate the love, to surrender completely, is to persevere in this practice. Only by trying to surrender more and more can we gain that willingness to surrender ourselves completely. Only by attending to ourselves more and more will we subside. And the more we subside, the more willing we will become to surrender ourselves completely. So love is, as Bhagavan often said, bhakti is the mother of jnana. So that is that is what is absolutely essential, is that love. That's why in the previous verse, he prayed for that love. And even in this verse, he implies a lack of love when he said, I had no intention to think of you, but you have the intention, but with the intention to kill me, by the rope of your grace, you pulled me to you, you attracted me to you. So grace obviously is the without grace we would be nowhere, because this love to surrender ourselves, this love to merge back into the place from which we rose, as Bhagavan describes it beautifully in verse 10 of Upadesha, being having subsided in the place from which we rose. That is karma and bhakti, that is yoga and jnana. So we need to have all-consuming love to subside. And the more we subside, the more we will have love. And the more we have love, the more we will subside. So this practice is absolutely essential. There's no shortcut. We just have to persevere in trying more and more to turn our attention within. Because the more we allow our attention, by allowing our attention to go outwards, we are feeding our Vishaya vasanas. That is, the vasanas are our inclinations. So they have no strength of their own. They derive their strength from us. The more we allow ourselves to be swayed by any particular vasana, the stronger that vasana will become. So if we're constantly allowing ourselves to be swayed by Vishaya vasanas in general, I mean, the totality of Vishaya vasanas will become stronger and stronger. But by practicing self-attentiveness, by attending to ourselves, instead of allowing our mind to be pulled out towards Vishayas by the Vishaya vasanas, we are thereby strengthening the Satvasana, the inclination just to be, and thereby weakening the Vishaya vasanas. So the practice is absolutely essential. But the key to practice is the love, and that love comes only from grace. Because the nature of ego, as Bhagavan made so clear in so many ways, the nature of ego is to constantly cling to things other than itself. That is, we cannot survive for a moment as ego without constantly clinging to form, as he put it in verse 25 of Ulladu Narpadu. The primary form we cling to is this form of 5 sheaths that we call body. We cling to it by taking it to be ourself. So, since the nature of ego is to be constantly clinging, first clinging to this body, and then constantly feeding on other forms, constantly attending to one form after another, since that is the nature of ego, the love to surrender is contrary to the nature of ego. So that love to surrender cannot come from ego. It can only come from our real nature, from the reality of ego. That is our own being, and that is grace. That is what we actually are, has infinite love for us as we actually are, because that is, to put in these terms, in the view of Bhagavan, we are not anything other than him. He doesn't see us as something other than him. So he loves us as himself. That is why Bhagavan has infinite love. His love has no limits, and his love is equal to all, because he's not loving us as the person we take ourselves to be. He loves us as we actually are. That's why he has equal love for people we would normally take to be good people, and also equal love to those we would normally take to be bad people, because he's seeing beyond all these differences and good and bad to what we essentially are. So Bhagavan's love is infinite, and that infinite love is what we experience as his grace. So it's only from grace that this love can come. But as Bhagavan often clarified, grace is not something that belongs to some distant God up in heaven or somewhere, but one day is going to descend on us. Grace is our own reality. It's our real nature. So this grace has to work through us. So we have to cooperate with the work of grace by yielding ourselves more and more to it, by trying more and more to turn within. So the practice is absolutely essential. But we will do the practice only to the extent to which we have love. And we will cultivate love only to the extent to which we do the practice. So they go hand in hand.
Yeah, in order to cultivate, thank you, Bhagavan. Thank you, Michael. In order to cultivate love, the practice, we should try every moment to subside and be self-attentive. That's what
Yes.
self-enquiry,
That is,
I
being
mean.
self-attentive is the means to subside. Because the nature of ego is to rise, stand, and flourish by attending to things other than itself. That's what Bhagavan means in verse 25 of Ulanapadu when he talks about grasping form. Ego is a formless demon. It's got no form of its own, but it comes into being, it stands and it flourishes by grasping and feeding on forms. So that means attending constantly to things other than ourselves. So since the nature of ego is to rise, stand, and flourish by attending to other things, it will subside only by attending to itself. So self-attentiveness is the means by which we can surrender ourselves completely to Bhagavan.
Yeah, when we practice in a daily practice life, it seems it is like the ego is so powerful. It seems like we don't want that ego doesn't want to give the control back to the self. It's like I am here, attend to me. The world is so real. It feels like I have to attend.
Who is this ego? This ego is not it. Ego is I. Ego means I.
Yeah, I. Correct.
But what is it? There is only one I. Ego is the mistaken identification. That is, as ego, we mistake ourselves to be this person. So whatever strength the ego seems to have, it derives only from what we actually are. So ego seems to us to have so much strength. But if ego has strength, then we should use whatever strength the ego has, we should use that strength to surrender ourselves. We can't constantly complain, oh, this ego is taking me here and there. That is, we who are complaining about ego it's ego itself complaining about itself. So
Correct.
we have to
Correct.
take responsibility. Grace is
Yes.
doing all that is necessary to help us, but willingness is necessary on our part. Bhagavan is ready to kill us here and now, but he will not kill us until we are willing to give ourselves completely to him. So in order to cultivate that willingness, we just have to persevere in trying. Yes,
Yeah, it feels
it's a constant battle because we have such strong, as ego, we have strong Vishaya vasanas. So we need to work to weaken those Vishaya vasanas and to strengthen our Satvasana. Satvasana
yeah,
is
it
another
feels
name for that bhakti.
yeah. Yeah, sometimes it feels like no matter how much we try it, why can't Bhagavan come and just take this ego and just make me like Bhagavan? It feels like why it is constant.
Bhagavan is waiting to do so. It's we who are obstructing. Because
Yeah.
we still like to rise and to enjoy this and to enjoy that, seek happiness here and there. So there's no obstacle other than ourselves.
Correct.
That these vasanas are not something other, but that is, vasanas are not ego, but it's the nature of ego to have vasanas. So it's we need to take responsibility. Grace is
Yes.
doing all that is necessary to help us, but we are not helping ourselves. All we need to do is to yield to that grace, surrender ourselves to that grace. But we're not yet willing to do so. We want to continue rising and seeking happiness here and there in other things. So we have a problem and we have a solution.
Correct.
As ego,
Correct.
we have a problem. What we actually are is the solution. So we have to take responsibility. We can't complain that grace is not helping enough. Grace is doing all that is necessary, but we need to cooperate with it by yielding ourselves to it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Michael.
Right.
Thank you.
Well, it's all this is all
Bhagavan.
no, all Bhagavan only.
Thank you.
Rati wanted to ask a question on the verse. Yes, Namo Ramanaya. Michael, I think this is the torment we all feel. We all feel tormented because, as even Srini was saying, since ego is always there, we are tormented by our unwillingness to let go completely and to surrender to the love. And this is a form of the love poetry of Bhagavan, the beautiful bhakti poetry of Bhagavan. Now, was this written? Did this song precede Aksharamanamala, or was it written after Aksharamanamala?
I'm not 100. I don't think anyone knows 100%, but the indications are that Aksharamlai came first.
Mm-hmm.
Because when Bhagavan talks about this in Day by Day, because he wrote Patikam and Ashtakam over a course of about just over 2 weeks. That is, he was the first 9 verses came on 9 consecutive days. On the 10th day, he composed verses 10 and 11 of Patikam. So the whole of Patikam was completed in 10 days. And then the next day, he started to go round the hill. And while going round the hill, he composed the first 6 verses of Ashtakam. So that's the 11th day. And when they returned to Skandashram, either that evening or the next morning, Narayana Reddy came. And Bhagavan, when he's talking about this in Day by Day, he said Narayana Reddy had already printed Aksharamlai. I think Echamal was the first one. I think it's Echamal was the first one to have Aksharamlai printed, and then Narayana Reddy had it printed. So when he came and he learnt about these verses, he wanted to print these also. So from that we have to infer that Aksharamlai was composed a little earlier than this, maybe a year or 2 earlier than this.
Mhm. I see. Okay. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But it's all very much the same bhava you can feel running throughout
Yes.
all these.
It's the same bhava. It's the same, I want to surrender to you, the Nayaka,
Yeah,
Nayaki bhava,
exactly. Yes.
exactly the same bhava. And
Yeah.
it's a form of that intense love poetry. In fact, what's good about it is that it actually makes us want to love to turn within. It makes
Yes.
us want to really desire it above all other desires.
That
And
is the
that is the
power of
strength.
Bhagavan's
Yeah.
poetry.
Yeah, that's the power of the love poetry, the bhakti
Yeah.
poetry.
Yes.
Yeah, the self-surrender,
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, that's the beauty of it. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Right.
This is the email question, Michael, which
Yes.
is on verse 30 of Guru Vacha Kove. And the question is, in verse 30 of Guru Vacha Kove, it is said, why, even when the mind is quiet, does the world seen like a dream suddenly appear in front of us? That is due to the stored momentum of past imaginations. Where are saved the stored momentum of past imaginations? Is it, for example, in the subconscious mind or the cosmic universal mind?
Okay. Firstly, the word that is translated here as imaginations is kalpane. Kalpane is a Tamil form of a Sanskrit word kalpana. It does mean imagination, but somehow the English word imagination doesn't do full justice to the meaning of this word. There's no exact equivalent of kalpana in English. That is, I often translate kalpana as fabrication, because kalpana means what forms, what shapes, what creates. So kalpana means the mental fabrication. And according to Bhagavan, everything other than our being is a kalpana. It's a fabrication. It's not real. It's created by the mind. As he says, for example, in the 7th paragraph of Nana, what actually exists is only Atma-Swarupa. The world, soul, and God are just kalpana in it, like the silver seen in a shell. That is, the silver seen in a shell, it's not really silver, it just seems to be silver. So this world, soul, and God, they're a mere appearance, they're a mere fabrication. And the underlying reality is Swarupa. So he says, Swarupa alone is God, Swarupa alone is the world, Swarupa alone is I. That means Swarupa, what we actually are, that is what appears as all these things. So Kalpana means that is when we use the word imagination in English, it doesn't quite do justice to it. It's because according to Bhagavan, the whole universe is a Kalpana. It's all a mental fabrication. So, but that's not directly related to the question, but I just wanted to clarify that. So when he talks about the momentum of past imaginations, what is actually there in Tamil is kalpane vehatal. Veha means that speed or momentum of the past imagination. But what he's actually talking about, I mean, though he's using these words, what is that momentum? It's nothing but our vasanas. So though he's not using the term vasana here, it's actually vasanas that he's referring to. But that is, we have cultivated these vasanas or inclinations to project and experience these vishayas. So long as the vasanas remain, even when the mind is quiet, the vasanas will be constantly rising and and making us feel inclined to go outwards. So that is what he's referring to here as the momentum of the past imaginations. So where are these stored? That is vasanas. It is the very nature of ego to have Vishaya vasanas. So if we want to ask where they're stored, that is generally, it is said, that the term that is used in Sanskrit for the store of the vasanas is chittam. Chittam means, in this context, means the will. That is the mind, or antakarana, the inner instrument, is said to consist of 4 parts, or as Bhagavan clarified, it's not exactly 4 parts, it's 4 main functions. Those are manas. Manas in this context, mind, means the grosser functions of the mind, like perceptions, memories, thoughts, feelings, emotions, and so on. All the grosser functions of the mind, they are classified as manam. Subtler than the mind is the intellect. That is the judging, discerning, distinguishing faculty of the mind. So that's subtler than the grosser function. That's called intellect. That is, manam is also called the manamaya kosha. The intellect is also called the vijnanamaya kosha, the intellect or buddhi. Subtler than that is the chittam. Chittam is the will. That is what is also called the karana sarira, causal body, or anandamaya kosha. And subtler than that is ego. So whereas the other 3 are classified as sheaves, ego is not a sheath. Ego is that which identifies all the 5 sheaves as I. So the function of ego is identifying all these as I. That is what is called abhimanam. So if you want to say where is it stored, it's stored in chittam. But chittam is not a place. It is just a term that is applied to the totality of all vasanas. But vasanas are the seeds that give rise to likes, dislikes, desires, attachments, and everything. So collectively, they're all called the will, or chittam, or the anandamaya kosha, or karana sarira. The reason it's called the karana sarira, the causal body, these are the vasanas are the seeds that give rise to everything else. It gives rise to the likes and dislikes, desires, attachments, and so on. And in turn, they give rise to thoughts. In turn, they give rise to perceptions. The whole universe is nothing but a projection of our own vasanas. So if you want to say where it is stored, it's stored in the will. But the will is not some thing. That is just a collective term for all these vasanas. And whose vasanas are they? They are ego's vasanas. So as soon as we rise as ego in waking or dream, we rise along with all our vasanas, all our inclinations. So these inclinations are not ego, but they don't have any existence independent of ego. They're ego's inclinations. So they come along with ego. Whenever we rise as ego, we rise along with all our vasanas. That's why Bhagavan says in the 8th paragraph of Nana, when he says, though the mind is made, he said, there's no adequate means to make the mind subside other than vichara. Why does he say there's no other adequate means? Because any other means is only a means to make it subside temporarily, to bring about the permanent subsidence of mind, the total dissolution of mind. Vichara is the only means. So he says, even if made to subside by other means, the mind will remain as if subsided, but will rise again. Even by pranayama, the mind will subside. But so long as the prana remains subsided, the mind will remain subsided. And so long as the mind remains subsided, the prana will remain subsided. But when the prana rises, that is, when the prana becomes active again, the mind will rise and wander under the sway of its vasanas. So as soon as we rise as ego, we rise along with our vasanas, and we wander under their sway. That all mental activity is nothing but the play of vasanas. When we allow ourselves to be swayed by vasanas, we engage in mental activity, and mental activity leads to activity of speech, and activity of speech leads to activity of body. So all these things, the seeds are the vasanas. And whose seeds are they? Their egos, their egos' inclinations. Regarding the wording of the question, the question is it, for example, are they stored, for example, in the subconscious mind? Subconscious mind is not, that is, the term subconscious mind is a term that was coined in psychology 100 or 150 years ago. I think it's a term probably first coined by Freud or by other psychologists of his generation. It's not, when we try to equate the concepts of Vedanta with the concepts of other schools of thought, we tend to get into a confusion. That is, there are certain ideas about the subconscious mind that are there in psychology. Some of those ideas are quite alien to the Vedantic view. So it's not a very useful term trying to apply the term subconscious and equate it with, for example, the chittam. The chittam means the will. So talking about the subconscious is, we're trying to equate concepts from different philosophies, different worldviews, trying to equate them together. That always leads to, well, it doesn't, it very seldom helps to clarify things. It usually just muddies the water. So it's better to think in terms of if we want to understand Vedanta, if we want to understand Bhagavan's teachings, we should try to understand on its own terms, rather than trying to understand in terms of some other alien system of philosophy or system or school of thought. So I think subconscious mind is not a useful term to use in this context. And regarding cosmic or universal mind, this is again an idea that, well, Bhagavan never accepted this idea of a universal mind. For example, when Chadwick had difficulty understanding Bhagavan's teaching, but the whole world is a creation of the mind. So he asked Bhagavan, does that mean the cosmic mind or universal mind? I don't know which term he used. Does it mean the universal mind? And then Bhagavan said, who is it who sees the world? There's one mind that sees the world. That one mind that sees the world is the mind that has created the world. Just like in dream, the dreamer is the one who sees the dream. So the dreamer is both the creator of the dream and the seer of the dream, because there's no creation other than seeing, according to Bhagavan's teaching, which is Drishti Shrishti Vada. That is, seeing is itself creation. So Bhagavan never accepted the idea of cosmic or universal mind. In some interpretations of Advaita, they do talk about the cosmic or universal mind. That is, they borrow a term from Sankhya, which is, I think, Hiranyagarbha. Hiranyagarbha is sometimes described as the universal mind, but this is not Bhagavan's teaching. Neither is the concept of the subconscious mind nor the concept of the universal mind, terms that we can equate to Bhagavan's teachings. Bhagavan talks about one mind. That is, well, Bhagavan has clarified the meaning of the term mind. Often we use the term mind to refer to thoughts collectively. This is what he explains in verse 18 of Upadesha Ennangale Manam, the thoughts alone are the mind. But of all the thoughts, the thought called I alone is the root. The thought called I means ego. So what the mind essentially is just this thought called I. That is, all thoughts are objects. All thoughts other than I are objects known by I. So, but the objects cannot exist independent of the subject. So we can say, if we take mind as a term, a collective term for all thoughts, the mind can be divided into two parts, subject and objects. So all other thoughts are objects. The ego, the thought called I, is the subject, it's the knower. Everything else is things known. So what the mind essentially is just the knower, the I. So that is what Bhagavan has clarified about the nature of mind. So Bhagavan is not talking about a universal mind. He's talking about the mind that is experiencing all of this. In other words, ego. In a dream, we don't suppose that there's some universal mind that has imagined a dream. When we wake up from, well, so long as we're dreaming, the dream world seems to us to be real. But as soon as we wake up from the dream, that is, as soon as we cease to identify with the dream body and switch our identification to this body, we at once recognize the dream was a mental fabrication. It was a kalpana. We don't suppose it was imagined by someone else. It's our own imagination, our own creation. That is, we create the dream world by seeing it. It has no existence at all, independent of our perception of it. And according to Bhagavan, this waking world is no different. This world exists only in the view of the one mind that sees it all. As he makes clear, for example, in verse 6 of Ulladu, in which he says the world is a form of the 5 kinds of sense perception, nothing else. That is, the world as we know it is made up of the 5 kinds of sense perception. That is, sights, sounds, tastes, smells, and tactile sensations. Take away these, and where is the world? So world, and all these sense impressions are actually mental impressions. It's the one mind. Bhagavan says there, manamondru, the mind alone, or the one mind that sees through all these 5 senses. So is there a world apart from the mind? So he's not talking about some universal mind. He's talking about our mind, we who are seeing all this. So I hope this is an adequate answer to that question.
The next question, go in order now. Can it be said that the more vairagya and surrender we have, the less effort is needed for self-investigation?
I don't think that's a very useful way of thinking about it. That is, the more vairagya is, vairagya and bhakti go hand in hand. If we understand bhakti as the love to turn within, and vairagya is the freedom from desire to turn outwards, they're one and the same thing. It's just describing the same thing from 2 different standpoints. The more love we have to go within, and therefore the less inclination we have to go outwards, but more effort we will make. That is, the effort is driven by the love. So the more love there is, the more effort there will be. But there will also be, opposition will also be stronger. Sometimes an analogy I give is if some hunters in a forest are hunting a tiger, and all they've got are spears and swords and things, they wounded the tiger, and finally they're able to corner the tiger. They surrounded the tiger. So because of all the wounds that have been inflicted upon it, the tiger will be very weak. But since its very life depends on it defending itself, it will fight back more fiercely than ever. Likewise with the mind, the more intense our love to surrender ourselves, the more the residual vasanas will fight back ferociously. That is, the vasanas themselves don't fight. Ego, under the sway of those vasanas, will fight back ferociously. So this is ego fighting with itself, so to speak. On one hand, it's got its love to surrender itself completely. On the other, it's still got the residual inclination to hold on to other things. So the effort will become more and more. But because as the more love we have for that, the more naturally we'll make effort for that. We will not be able, if we truly have love for that, we will not be able to remain without making effort for that, because our love for it will drive us to make that effort. So we shouldn't think in terms of effort getting less. We should think in terms of effort getting more. Because only when we make that supreme effort just to hold on to our being and not allow ourselves to be swayed even to the slightest degree by these Vishaya vasanas, will we succeed in this. So this is the supreme effort. When I say not to be, the effort not to be swayed by other things, it's not that that's a separate effort. The effort we make to hold on to our being is itself the effort to avoid being swayed by other things. Is that I don't know who asked the question, but is it a clear answer to your question?
Yes, Michael, it's clear. Thank you.
Yes.
There's a comment, and I've been asked to read this out to you. It's hats off to Michael James for translating the poem so beautifully. Not the easiest of languages, and more so because this is classical Tamil. Absolutely brilliant.
Well, if at all I've done this well, it's only because of the love that Bhagavan gives us for him and for his teachings, and that love to try to understand deeply what Bhagavan is saying. Because it's very easy to read Bhagavan's teachings superficially, to have a very shallow understanding. But we need to appreciate how deep Bhagavan's teachings are. And we will be able to appreciate the depth of his teachings only to the extent to which we devote ourselves to them, devote ourselves to putting them into practice to the best of our ability. However deep we go in his teachings are still deeper. And finally, one day we'll lose ourselves completely in that depth, the depth of our own being, infinite depth of our own being, which is Bhagavan.
The next question is Michael, you said in one of your earlier videos, and the quotation is, "A ling is not meant to represent Shiva. A ling is meant to be Shiva." How should we understand this? As I see it, a ling merely represents Shiva because Shiva is not that form of linga. Could you please clarify this? Thank you.
Okay, I don't remember in what context I said that, but when we go to a temple or at home, if we have any idol, whether it's a Shiva linga or an idol of a vigraha of Rama or Krishna or Narasimha, or even if you're Christian, some Christian icon of some of Jesus or a cross or whatever. Though these are representations, when you're actually worshipping that, you don't worship it with the attitude, this is a representation. You consider God himself has appeared in that form, and you worship it with such a bhava. So you're not merely worshipping a representation of God, you're worshipping God in that form. Of course, God is not limited by that form, but that the form you're worshipping is more than just a representation. That in the bhava, if you're really worshipping, if you worship with that bhava, that vigraha, or that form, is God himself. And regarding the linga is a very significant form, because the linga is a very abstract form. Most forms of God that are worshipped are more or less anthropomorphic. Even if it's, even for example, Ganesha is in the form of an elephant-headed god, but we still, you view him as a person. Narasimha is half lion. He's viewed as a person, as a, but the linga is a very abstract form in that respect. What the linga is representing is the formless nature of Shiva. But we don't just think of it, when you're worshipping, you don't just think of it as a representation. You think of it, yes, this is Shiva himself. As I say, I can't remember in what video I said that, but I imagine it was in that sense that I was saying it. It's the bhava of the worshipper is that whatever representation of God they are worshipping is not just a representation, it is God himself. That is why in temple worship, there's a whole, that is, when an idol is installed in a temple, they have what is called prana pratishta. Prana means the life. So they have the idol, when it's made by the craftsman, is lifeless. But when it's installed in the temple, there are certain rituals that are done to bring the life into that. So that is called the prana pratishta. And after that, it's no longer just a mere work of a craftsman. It's no longer a work of art. It is God himself in that form. That is the bhava with which on which temple worship is based, or any worship. As Bhagavan says, for example, in the 5th verse of Upadesha Undiyya, Ennuru yavam ireyuru enna, enni varipadal undipara. Enni means considering. So considering all the 8 forms to be forms of God. The 8 forms are the 5 elements that make up everything: the sun, the moon, and Jiva. So basically, everything is related to these 8 forms. And if you consider those 8 forms to be forms of God and worship accordingly, that is good worship of God. So the key word there is enni. Some people say, oh, Bhagavan said you have to see everything as God. Bhagavan isn't there talking about seeing everything as God. You have to consider everything to be God and worship with that and that. So when you worship an idol, you don't consider it to be a representation. From an outsider's point of view, it may seem to be just a representation, but from a devotee's point of view, they consider that to be God himself. Then only is it good worship of God. That doesn't mean that the devotee is thinking God is limited to that form, but God has appeared in that form, just like Bhagavan. Bhagavan is not the person we see him to be. Bhagavan made it very clear. He repeatedly, I am not this body is not what I am. But we don't consider Bhagavan just to be the outward form of Bhagavan, the person Ramana Maharshi. We don't consider him just to be a representation of God. God himself has appeared in that form. So with the same attitude, the devotee who worships a linga or any type of vigraha, they consider that form to be God himself has appeared in that form. But a mature devotee will understand, though God may appear in special forms, God is in no way limited to that form. So we consider that Ramana Maharshi is Bhagavan. That we consider him to be God himself. Guru, is the Supreme Lord, has appeared in that form. But we don't limit it him to that forms. So we don't think just because the body has passed away, the body lived for just 70 years, 54 years in Tiruvannamalai, we don't consider that Bhagavan is limited to that time. Bhagavan is eternal. And Bhagavan is not limited to a place. He is omnipresent. As Murugan says in a verse in Ramanasani Murai, the whole universe is Ramanashram, because there's not a place where Bhagavan is not present. He's present in all times, in all places, and of course beyond all time and space. So by worshipping God in a vigraha, you're not, if it's with a mature understanding, if it's done, it's not limiting God to that form, but it is considering that God has appeared in that form for worship. That is all the omnipresent, infinite, eternal Lord has appeared in this form to receive my love and to bestow his grace on me. That is the attitude of a worshipper.
So in this regard, what you say makes sense. In this regard, we can bring in the example of Śrī Ramakrishna worshipping Kali. For him, Kali was not just an idol. It was
his mother. He went and talked to her, and she talked back to him.
Yeah.
So he had so lost himself in that bhava, but Kali for him wasn't just a stone idol. It was his living mother, living, breathing, conscious mother, and guiding him. And when Totapuri wanted to teach Advaita to Ramakrishna, he said, "I'll have to go and ask my mother." Totapuri thought, what is this? This grown man has to go and ask his mother. He didn't understand what he means by his mother is Kali. And Krishna went to a Kali shrine, and Kali said to him, "Yes, I have brought Totapuri here for you to teach you, so you take the lessons from him."
In the same manner, sir, somebody took a photograph of Bhagwan to Bhagwan while he was leaving. And that person said, I'm carrying a photograph of Bhagwan. So like Bhagwan said, why do you consider it to be a photograph?
Exactly.
Why merely a photograph? Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Michael,
when Bhagavan, sorry, can I just say one thing? When Bhagavan worships Aruṇācala, yes, he's worshipping Lord Shiva in the form of a hill. But for Bhagavan, it is not just a hill. As he says at the beginning of Ashtakam, Arivaru Giriyana Vamadaru Mamma, that it's seated there calmly as if a hill devoid of awareness. But Amma, that's an expression of wonder. He didn't say its action, the action of its grace cannot be, is adisayam. Adisayam isn't sale, arivaridakam. It is something wonderful. It cannot be understood by anyone. So Bhagavan is seeing Aruṇācala as a hill, but not just as a hill.
Michael, because you are talking about Ramakrishna, Do we know what was the opinion of Ramana about him? Does he consider him a saint, totally realized being, or
About Ramakrishna or about Totapuri?
the opinion of Ramana Maharshi for Ramakrishna?
Bhagavan doesn't have opinions like you and I have opinions, but there is a nice saying in Tamil, Palm being called Palm Bay Arium. That means the legs of a snake are known only to a snake. What that implies is the jnani alone can know the jnani. So Bhagavan won't express an opinion, but Bhagavan will certainly have seen the same jnana in that is, Bhagavan will obviously have seen the jnana in Ramakrishna, but Bhagavan's view is not limited. He doesn't see the same jnana just in Ramakrishna. He sees the same jnana in you and in me. Bhagavan doesn't see us as the person we take ourselves to be. He sees us as we actually are, as jnana. In verse 13 of Uludunapadu, he says, Jnanamam tane me. Oneself who is jnana alone is real. So Bhagavan doesn't see this world as full of people, some of whom are jnanis, some of whom are not jnanis. So we can't limit Bhagavan in any way. But definitely, Bhagavan would have, I mean, I think there's little doubt about, just like we cannot, well, some people may doubt, but for those of us who are devotees of Bhagavan, we have no doubt that Bhagavan is God himself in that form. I think the same applies to Ramakrishna. That is, God appears in different forms at different times for different purposes. So Bhagavan would certainly have recognized, I mean, if we're able to recognize the state of Ramakrishna, at least to have some inkling of it, would not Bhagavan have understood that?
Yes,
but Bhagavan doesn't state her opinion about this or that.
Yes, context in which I'm asking this, because if we are in the vision of Drishti Shrishti and Ekajiva Vada, this means that Bhagavan and Ramakrishna are something, Bhagavan like Ramana, not Bhagavan like Bhagavan Ramakrishna.
Yeah.
So I will talk about Ramana and Ramakrishna, are nothing but illusory imagination in the dream of, in my dream or in your dream, yes?
Yes and no, because that is the form of Bhagavan is an illusory appearance, like all forms.
Yes.
But what is shining through that form, that is the reality. It is, Bhagavan said, God, Guru, and Self are one and the same. So what we are seeing outwardly as Bhagavan or as Ramakrishna is our own reality. What is shining through that form is our own reality. That is why we're attracted to these divine forms, because we see ourselves in them. However vaguely, we are able to recognize something. So there's an irresistible attraction, we feel.
Yes, so my problem with them is that
the form is ultimately not real, but the reality of that form, what is shining through that form, that is the only reality. That is our own self.
So we can say that if this is so, this means that this reality shines even now. It cannot shine by definition, which means that my view, like that I am this body or Ramana is this body, is is illusory projection.
Yes.
But my problem, because I'm in love with Ramakrishna too, but I cannot help myself to see the seemingly at least differences in the teachings of Ramakrishna and Ramana. And we know this from Advaita society, from the people like Sarvapriyananda, etc. And there are huge differences. You know
There are
them.
differences in people's understanding. Even in Bhagavan's teachings, if we take Bhagavan's teachings objectively, we can find differences. Okay, his core teachings are consistent. The core teachings expressed in works like Uladunapadu Nana, Atma-vichara, Upadeshundya, Aruṇācala Padigam, they're consistent. But when Bhagavan is answering questions, he answers from so many different perspectives, because as Bhagavan himself said, teachings cannot be given en masse. Teaching has to be according to the taught. So Bhagavan himself, if you read books like Talks, Day by Day, and such things, if you books like Talks, Day by Day, and so on, you will find Bhagavan answering questions in a wide variety of ways. I'm not saying the recordings are necessarily accurate, but even then, if you were there in Bhagavan's presence, you'll find Bhagavan giving different teachings to different people, because it's what is suited to that individual. So yes, of course we can see differences between Ramakrishna's teachings and Bhagavan's teaching, just as we can see differences within Bhagavan's teachings. But we can also see the basic teachings are the same. That is the Shruti, the base note of Ramakrishna's teachings and Bhagavan's teachings is very, very much in tune. It may be expressed in different ways, but it is essentially the same. Regarding the followers of Ramakrishna or the followers of Bhagavan, everyone understands in their own way. As Bhagavan said, according to the purity of the Antakarana, the same teaching reflects in different ways. So there is many different understandings of Advaita as there are so-called Advaitins. That's why we need to go to the heart of what is Bhagavan's teachings. What is the essential teaching of Bhagavan? And if we understand the essential teaching of Bhagavan, we'll be able to see that also in Ramakrishna's teachings. He may have expressed it in different ways according to the people who are around him, but the heart of it is the same. And also, he had a different mission, Ramakrishna. Bhagavan had a different mission. They served different purposes at different, though they were very close in time, that one reality came in these two different forms to fulfill different, somewhat different purposes, but essentially they're the same.
Yes, maybe the problem of this talk is that we are going to Shrishti Drishti in order to talk historically about them, like avatars.
Of course.
And then we have to make a lot of mistake and assumptions, which is the position of Ramana. He said that we don't have to go there because it will be full of contradictions.
Yes.
Because, for example, Ramakrishna talks about absolute determinism, and there is a consensus in Ramakrishna order about it. There are a lot of lectures I have talked with these senses, which means by definition that according to him, our talk now, even my words, everything is nothing but God's deed.
That is people's understanding of his teaching. But that is in Vedanta, there's no such thing as absolute determinism. What is determined is prarabdha, which is the fruit of our past actions, which is determined by God. When he gives us this body, he gives us a selection of the fruit of our past karmas. But Ramakrishna never denied freedom of will. And anyone who denies freedom of will is invalidating all scriptures, all spiritual teachings. Because if we have no freedom of will, Ramakrishna's central teaching was bhakti. Bhakti is will. If we have no freedom of will, all spiritual teachings become meaningless if you deny freedom of will. So what the followers of Ramakrishna understand, that is, I mean, do you think that Bhagavan's devotees are good representatives of Bhagavan's teachings? No. That is, if each one of us understand from our limited perspective, as Bhagavan said, according to the purity of the antakarana, the same teaching reflects in different ways. So as our minds get purified, we understand more clearly and more deeply. But the perfect understanding is when we lose ourselves completely. And then when we lose ourselves, all differences disappear.
Yes, it's just difficult to swallow because when people like Sarvapriyananda or other monks which are establishing these teachings for so many years claim so.
But we're all humans. None of us none of us are perfect. None of us are perfect. So
I know. That's why when we are investigating, we are trying to do our best with our friends and books and our experience, but
this is why we need to stop looking at the outside world, look within. If you want clarity, ultimately clarity is not to be found outside. Clarity is to be found within. Why Bhagavan's teachings give us clarity? Because they're constantly reminding us of the need to turn within. But the clarity comes not from the books, but from the following where the books are pointing. As Ramakrishna himself said, the Panchangam means the astrological almanac, may tell you when it's going to rain. But however much you squeeze the pages of the almanac, you'll not get a drop of water. Likewise with all scriptures, all spiritual teachings. The truth is not in the teaching, but what the teachings are pointing at.
But Michael, if there is only one ego, and this ego is Ekajivavada, and this is I, me,
then who is that one ego? That is what we need. That is, when it is said one ego, that is not to be applied so long as we look outwards. In effect, there is a multiplicity of jivas. The teaching Ekajiva is given to us to make us investigate the reality of the one jiva in whose view all these many jivas exist. So there's a verse in Guruvachaka Kavai, which is in which Bhagavan says, for those with courage, let them accept that there's one jiva and sink within investigating who is that one jiva. Only for those who are not ready to accept this, the scriptures talk as if there are many. So long as we're looking outwards, it's appropriate to behave as if we view everything as if there are many jivas. See how Bhagavan behaved. Bhagavan treated everyone with kindness as if there are so many different jivas. So we need to understand not just the teachings, but what is the intention of the teaching. The intention of Ekajivavada is not to change our view on the external world. It is to turn within to see what we actually are. Is that clear?
Yes, my only problem is that this one jiva always somehow survives, and here I am, 70 years after the death of the body of Ramana, who was one jiva, and who was
he was not a jiva.
The body of Ramana, when he was 15 years old, let's say that he was jiva, and
in our view, he appears to be.
In our view, that's why I'm pointing out.
The jiva is nothing but ego. Ego is not an object. Ego is the subject. So the idea of a multiplicity of jivas is itself it's implying a multiplicity of subjects. But in whose view is there a multiplicity of subjects? In the view of one jiva. So let us investigate that one jiva and let's not worry about other things. If we look outside, there's infinite diversity. But the underlying reality is abheda. There's no difference. But we can experience that abheda only by looking within. So long as we look outwards, inevitably there are so many differences.
So are we saying that this never really happened? This body of Ramana, Aruṇācala, etc. This is imagination of the ego now in this moment.
The ultimate truth is ajata. Nothing has ever happened. What the truth is, there's just one being which is ever unchanging. But because we've risen as ego, all this seems to be true. This world seems to be true, all the history seems to be true, all the lives of saints seem to be true, all this diversity of religions seem to be true, all this politics and wars and famines and everything seems to be true. Because we take ourselves to be this body, if by taking ourselves to be a body, that is what is real is only I. Nothing other than I is real. But when we identify ourselves as I am this body, we superimpose our own reality upon this body. So the body seems to be real. And since the body is a small part of this world, the whole world with all its history and science and geography and politics and religions and everything all seems to be true.
So we are saying basically that now in this meeting, we in each moment creating the word, Ramana, the teachings, the seemingly 71 people, but nothing of this is real, only Bhagavan is.
Only I is real. And that I is Bhagavan. That is the true form of Bhagavan.
Thank you.
Yeah, just one point in that. When we say I and so on, we're really talking about just pure consciousness or awareness, that reality.
Yes.
When we say one being, that's what we're talking about. Because sometimes when we use these words, they can obscure things. I mean,
Yes.
when we say one being, it becomes like something,
Yes.
but like, the one God and so on, it tends to have that effect of
that is why
making something substantial.
That is why the core teaching of the Upanishad, the core teaching of Vedanta is Tattvamasi. What we take to be that God, that Brahman, that happiness, it's all nothing but I. And what we take to be I is, that is the problem with the word I refers to what is real, to ourself. But we mistake ourselves to be something that is unreal, namely this body. So then we get into confusion as if there are two eyes, a real eye and a false eye, or a big eye and a small eye. It's all one eye, but that one eye in its pure state, that is the reality. When it's mixed and conflated with upadis, with adjuncts, it is what is called ego. But it's the same eye.
It is there. I think the problem, even with I think the two things, it's as it says in the Gita, sort of where words turn back. And I think, when in the Upanishad, it's neti neti, sort of not this, which means basically that anything you can think of or anything you can name, it's not that.
Yes.
I think it's in trying to name and designate in any way that we run into this problem, because we always grasp things when we name. So that's why I think in a way neti neti is really, like it's more like a method sort of thing, that anything you can think of is not that, because I find this problem also with self and I and so on, that automatically the mind, because it's a name, anyway,
yes.
It often tends to obscure.
Yes, but
that's why people use that method sometimes of negation, so that we become a bit free of this grasping all the time.
Yes, but the negation is trying to negate what is not I.
Exactly.
The one thing that cannot be negated as not I is I. So who am I? I am I. That is Bhagavan's core teaching.
But it's a felt experience, right, Michael? This is it, because
It's more than a felt experience. It
yes,
is
I mean,
it's the
experience is
ground
not
of
something.
it's the ground of all experience. It's the light that illumines both the knower and the known. That is whatever
Yes,
words,
exactly.
as you say, words will always fail.
Yes, I think I
Words,
can be problematic. Yeah.
I is certainly problematic, but the problem lies not in I itself, but in the false identification. That is,
Yes,
I is both the root of all our problems and the solution to all our problems. I as ego calls those all problems. I as it actually is the solution to all problems.
can we not simply sort of say no ego and no sort of self in the sense of
But we cannot
grasping?
we can't totally deny ego, because ego, though ego as ego is false, there's an element of reality in it. Just like the snake is unreal as a snake, but it's real as a rope. Ego is unreal as ego, but it's real as the pure I.
But that's after we've gone through this procedure. I mean, after
No,
we've
even
gone
now,
through this inquiry.
Bhagavan says the idea of Advaita in the that is duality during practice and Advaita after attainment, even that is not true. Who else is one but the 10th man, both when one is anxiously searching for the 10th man and when one finds oneself to be the 10th man? He says in Uludunapadu.
But Michael, distant men always somehow survive like ego. Here we are after 70 years talking about Ramana. That's why I'm joking about it, because somehow we are always in the end, and always there is one Jiva to survive.
Well, that is because we haven't yet put into practice, or we haven't gone deep enough in the practice yet. When we go deep enough in the practice, what will remain is one only without a second. Call it whatever you will. And you cannot be other than that. So the most natural name for it is I.
Should we go on to the next question?
Yes.
Yeah, so the next question is, when Bhagwan prays, is he trying to teach by way of example?
Bhagavan is not trying to do anything. This is divine poetry. It surged forth from him without any conscious volition on his part. But we can say, viewing it objectively, yes, through these verses, Bhagavan is teaching us. But when he was singing these verses, he was fully in that bhava. So he didn't sit down and decide, I'll compose these verses in order to teach. It was with no volition or anything. It's a divine flow of poetry. That's all we can say. Bhagavan himself told how he came to compose these verses, that the words of the first verse started coming to him. And they were persistently coming to him. And yet first he thought, what have I got to do with these words? He was brushing them aside. When they persisted in coming, he finally wrote the first verse. It just flowed. And then the next day, the words of the next verse started coming to him. So there's no doership there, no sense of purpose there. He's just that is. We can say what poured out of Bhagavan's heart is the anguish felt by all spiritual aspirants. Or if you want to be an echo of Jiva Vardin, you can say the only spiritual aspirant. In other words, this is what we should be praying. This is the prayers that will naturally come to anyone following this path. But Bhagavan happens to have expressed them in the most beautiful and heart-melting manner.
Next question. What is the difference between the intellect required for functioning in the world and the clear and sharp intellect that is required to turn within? Is there any correlation between the two, or are they completely independent?
Intellect is the ability to see things clearly. We can use that ability either to try and understand this world, whether in science or in politics or whatever it is. And there are people who are brilliant at science, there are people who are brilliant at economics, brilliant at this, or all these different in science and so many different things. Or we can use that same clarity to look within and try to see what we ourselves actually are. Essentially, it's the same intellect, but the same intellect is being used for different purposes. And those who are very brilliant in external use of the intellect often don't have the clarity to be able to understand these teachings at all. There may be many brilliant scientists, brilliant philosophers, and so on, who, if you try to explain these teachings to them, they just won't grasp it. It just won't be clear to them. Other things may be clear to them. The nature of quantum mechanics or this or that may be clear to them. The very complicated things may seem clear to them. But this very, very simple, basic, fundamental truth will be far too simple for them. They just won't be able to grasp it. So we can say intelligence is one, but the use what we use our intelligence for determines what will be clear to us and what will not be clear to us. If we're wise, before using our intelligence to know about anything else, we'll use our intelligence to try and know, who am I? Because whatever we know about anything else, how can we say any knowledge that we have is true knowledge when we don't even know what we ourselves actually are? When it is clear that our knowledge of ourselves, our awareness of ourselves, is confused. We are mistaking ourselves, this fundamental awareness, to be an object of awareness. What can be more greater confusion than that? So whatever we know about anything else all our knowledge of other things is based upon a false awareness of ourselves. That's why Bhagavan says in Atma-vichara, in I think verse 3, without knowing oneself, if one knows all else, so what? In other words, what's the use of knowing all other things if one doesn't even know what oneself is? And if one knows oneself, what else remains to be known? That is, if we know what we are, we will know who we alone are. There's nothing else to know.
Next question is, at some place, Bhagavan has mentioned that one may not be able to do self-investigation all the time. During such times, what are some of the other practices, for example, japa, etc., that one can do to keep the mind occupied or increase that love for him?
It's not a matter of keeping the mind occupied. It's a matter of keeping the mind out of mischief. That is, the mind, if we're not turning the mind inwards, it's going to be going out towards this and that. So we at least need to minimize the harm being done. So I would say the best use to make of our mind, if we are not turning within, is studying Bhagavan's teachings, because Bhagavan, more than anything else, Bhagavan's teachings will be constantly reminding us of the need to turn within. But that doesn't mean that it's, I mean, there may be times when we just, when we just have no taste to go within and we have love just to sing Bhagavan's name or something. That's all good, because keeping our mind dwelling on Bhagavan will indirectly remind us of the need to turn within. Because if we repeat the name Ramana, 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 what does Ramana stand for? Ramana is the name of the great God who came to teach us to know who am I. So we can't think of Bhagavan without remembering his core teaching. So that again will give us the love to turn within. So anything that will enkindle in our heart the love to turn within is it's not a substitute for actually turning within, but it will be an aid to turn within. It will encourage us to turn within.
But Michael, the way the question was asked somehow implies that Bhagavan said that there are times where it's impossible to do in self-inquiry.
I don't know, but Bhagavan ever said
and
that.
I don't agree with that statement. I feel that
well, Bhagavan
we can do it each
Bhagavan
time.
asked us to attend to ourselves at all times. When he defined what is Atma-vichara, he said sadakalamum. Sadakala means always. Keeping the mind fixed on oneself alone is Atma-vichara. So, and so many times he emphasized the need for constant. But in practice, because of our lack of love, probably for most of us, we have to admit that we're not attending to ourselves all the time. So since we're not attending to ourselves, how should we use that? How should we, if we don't even feel the love to attend to ourselves, what is the useful way of using our attention? You attend to Bhagavan's teachings, think of Bhagavan, pray to him for the love to turn within, and we come back to it again.
So basically we are saying that we can do it all the time, but it's up to us. It's not about circumstances. It's only about our ego.
It's about, according to the degree of our love. In order to keep our attention fixed firmly on ourselves throughout the waking and dream state requires great love, which most of us are sadly lacking. But at least we have, the very fact that we're here talking about this subject means we at least have a little love for this. So we have to build on that love. The most effective way to build on it is actually to practice self-attentiveness. But when the love is insufficient even for us to attend to ourselves, let us think about his teachings, study his teachings. Pray to him to give us that love to go within.
But Michael, let's be sincere.
Can I just say one other thing? Bhagavan is not prescriptive. Bhagavan says, but attending to ourselves is the means to attain liberation. If we want to be liberated, this is the means. But he doesn't say, do it this way, do it that way, do this, don't do that. Bhagavan doesn't give do's and don'ts. He shows us the direction. If you want liberation, this is the way to go. The way to go is back inside.
But in Avadhuta Gita starts with that statement that love and desire to investigation comes only by the grace. And
yes, exactly. But that grace is not something that grace is equal to all. You were asking about Ramakrishna. Ramakrishna gave a beautiful analogy. He said grace is always showering like the monsoon rain. It's pouring on all of us every moment. But he said, just like the rain that falls on a mound will run off the mound, in low-lying places the rainwater will accumulate. Likewise, the more we rise, the prouder we are, the more we rise as an ego, and the more the rainwater will just run off us like water off a duck's back. But the more we subside, the more we will imbibe the grace.
The next question is from Raghu. Raghu, do you want to ask this question? You've written it, you've written the quotation in Tamil.
Yeah. Namaskaram, Michael.
Namaskaram.
Michael, my question, just to clarify, நான் உதியாது உள்ள நிலை, நாம் அதுவாய் உள்ள நிலை. So
Yes.
there is no rising of I, and that subsidence, exactly the deep sleep state. That is the self. Correct, Michael?
No, not exactly. When Bhagavan says Nanu Diyadu Ulanilai, he's not talking about a temporary state of I not rising. Well, we can take it, yes. In sleep, there's no ego rising, so in sleep we are that. Even now we are that, but we don't know ourselves as that. But it's very clear from the second sentence in which he says, without investigating the place where I rises, how to attain that tanirape, that annihilation of oneself in which I does not rise. So from that we need to understand that when what he refers to in the first sentence as the state in which I is without rising, the I not rising being state, is not just a temporary state. He's talking about that permanent state.
In the deep sleep, there is no Raghu, there is no world, there is no God, nothing exists.
No, there is only ourself as Brahman.
Self.
Yeah.
Na mudiya ulla nilai. Now we are awake. Now we are in the Zoom call.
Yeah.
Yet we are the same as what we
We
were.
are the same, yes.
Yeah.
So, but Bhagavan, though we are Brahman, even now, we don't experience ourselves as such. So we need to understand when he says in the first sentence that the state in which I is without rising is the state in which we are as that. He's not saying we're only at such times are we that. That would be absurd, because that would mean that being Brahman is a temporary state, which obviously it isn't. What he means is, in order to experience ourselves as that, we need to be without rising. So long as we're rising, we fail to recognize what we actually are, which is that. In sleep, we don't rise as ego, so in sleep, all that exists and shines in sleep is our own being, which is Brahman. So Brahman alone exists in sleep. And Brahman knows itself as Brahman, but Brahman knows itself as Brahman eternally. Even when we seem to be in waking or seem to be in dream, what we actually are knows itself as it actually is.
It only knows itself.
Yeah, but the difference between sleep or any other state of manolaya and nasa is that in any state of laya, such as sleep, ego has subsided, and as a result of ego subsiding, what shines is Brahman alone. Brahman means our real nature. So we alone remain in sleep. But the clear awareness, the pure awareness that shines in sleep, does not destroy ego, because ego has gone AWOL. It's absent. So you can't destroy ego in its absence. If a court sentences a criminal gives a death sentence, that death sentence can be only carried out if a criminal is present. If a criminal is on the run, how to carry out the death sentence? So the criminal has gone AWOL. He's gone absent without leave in sleep. So ego is not destroyed in sleep, or in Nirvikalpa Samadhi, or in swoon, or in coma. So though ego is absent, it is not. It is temporarily non-existent, but it is not destroyed. In the case of jnana, that is how ego is destroyed. Ego needs to experience itself as pure awareness. Of course, ego can never experience itself as pure awareness because ego is an impure awareness. As soon as ego experiences itself as pure awareness, it ceases to be ego and remains as pure awareness. Because what knows pure awareness is only pure awareness. So in the case of Manolaya, first ego subsides and Brahman alone, then Brahman alone remains shining. In the case of jnana, ego experiences itself as Brahman and is thereby destroyed. Brahman means that Satchit, that pure being awareness. So when Bhagavan talks about that state in which I does not rise, he means the state in which I never rises.
When the self appears, the world does not appear. When the world appears, the self does not appear. This is a translation of Nanyar.
Yeah.
This is exactly the same.
Except the self is not a very good translation of Swarupa. Swarupa means what we actually are, our real nature. If we say the self, it sounds like some sort of object. So Swarupa is Swarupa is a word we cannot adequately translate in English. Usually it's translated as real nature. But what it implies is what we actually are. So when we know ourselves as we actually are, there's no world. When there's a world, we don't know ourselves as we actually are, because the world appears only to ego, only to ourselves as ego. So only when we mistake ourselves to be, I am Raghu, I am Michael, I am this person, I am that person, does the world appear. So there's no state in which the world appears and we know ourselves. When we know ourselves, there'll be no world. When we mistake ourselves to be something other than what we actually are, then only the world appears.
The Chit Jada Granthi has to see itself as pure Chit, then Chit Jada Granthi will.
Yes. Then there never was any Chit Jada Granthi. That is, when we see ourselves as we actually are, we will see that we have never risen as ego.
Thank you for
that. Is the state in which I is without rising. The Nanudiyadu. That's such an important verse, that verse 27. Such a beautifully expressed verse.
I keep hearing this from you all the time.
Yeah.
I thought I really understood, but then when I encountered these lines from Bhagavan, the body which by itself is inert does not say I. The real consciousness has no rising, no setting.
Yes.
But between these two arises a spurious being which itself called the mind or the soul, so-called soul.
Yeah.
So the seer, which is an illusionary jiva.
Yeah. And one thing I rises as the extent of a body. That is, we limit ourselves as this body.
Now only I can pray for more love. That's
all we can do. Well, but if our prayer is sincere, we will try to put it into practice. There's no use just praying with our lips. We need it, but prayer needs to be from deep in our heart. And if we truly have love for that love, we truly want to have that love, we will try to experience it here and now by turning within. As Bhagavan says in Maharshi's Gospel, someone says, if I surrender, is no prayer necessary? Bhagavan said, surrender itself is a mighty prayer. The greatest prayer is turning our attention back within.
Agilam Sagalamum Vilingidum Jalajamai. Where does this line come from, Michael?
That's verse 27 of Aksharamlai.
Oh.
And the same idea is there in the first verse of Pancharatnam. That is swallowing everything in your bright rays. What that means is when we know ourselves as we actually are, in other words, when we know our Aruṇācala, everything will be swallowed.
Om Namo Bhagavati Śrī Aruṇācala Ramanāya.
The next question. Is self-enquiry the same as, in quotation marks, to continue trying to cling to the mere feeling I? Or is it something else? I understand that it is difficult to explain in words and that words can never really express what an experience is, particularly an experience of this kind, which is beyond the mind and which involves the death of the mind. But in order to guide the practice well, it is perhaps necessary to try to understand more and more precisely what it refers to. Because I'm practicing something that is not true, we always say that practice is important. Well, I need to understand this practice better. The mere feeling of I can be an experience where there is no sharpness of attention, but a more diffuse attention. There is another practice where attention makes a greater effort to see the experience, the seer, the elusive I, and focuses there. This is how I experience these two subtly different forms. Which of them is closest to Bhagwan's teachings? Thank you very much.
There is only one practice, and that practice has been very, very clearly expressed by Bhagavan as keeping the mind always on oneself, putting the mind on oneself. What does that mean? Putting the mind on something means putting the attention on it. So keeping our attention on ourselves. We can say the feeling I, but the feeling I, it always seems to me that this word feeling is a very inadequate word to say. We have a feeling. When we talk about a feeling, it's something that is vague. We're not quite sure of it. I have a feeling he's not a good person. That's the sort of way in which we use the word feeling. It's much. I is not something elusive. You mentioned elusive I. I is not elusive, but one thing that is clearer than anything else is I am. Our own being is very, very clear. It's not at all elusive. It's not just a feeling. It's our fundamental awareness. I am. So it seems to me one problem with feeling is it suggests something that is rather vague, something that is not very certain or not very sure. Another thing is a feeling is something that is felt. The word feeling suggests an object rather than that which knows all objects. So it is, I think, better than the word feeling is awareness. That is, there's a word in Tamil, unavu, which means awareness. In some contexts, it can also mean a feeling. So it's often translated in English books. Unavu is often translated as a feeling I, but in English, I feel feeling is a very inadequate word and a potentially misleading word because it suggests something rather vague. But it's not vague at all. The one thing that we know more clearly than we know any other thing is I am. So, as you say, it's very important to understand the practice. Because obviously, if we don't understand the practice properly, we won't be able to practice it properly. And this practice is a very simple practice, but at the same time, a very subtle practice. So, I is the most obvious thing, but it's also the most subtle of all things. So it's not concrete. You can't point it out like you can point out objects in the world. This is a microphone, this is a PC, this is a keyboard. All these are concrete things. I is something far subtler than that. But though it's very subtle, it's also very clearly obvious because it's the basis of all experience. That is, who experiences anything? I experience. So without I, there's no experience, there's no awareness, there are no feelings, there's nothing. So I is we need to clearly understand that this awareness I am, this is the Adhara, the Adhisthana, the ground, the base, the foundation, the substratum, what underlies everything. So there can't be any experience without the fundamental experience, I am. So it's no words can capture it, but we need to think deeply about it and understand what we are talking about. It's not just some. If we take I to be elusive, we haven't understood what it is we are to investigate, because it's not some people say looking for I. It's not looking for I, it's looking at I, so to speak. Of course, it's not an object that we're looking at, but why I say looking at I, it's not, we're not looking for something unknown. It's ever known. We are just trying to know what we always know, but know it clearly, because now we know it mixed and conflated with other things. We always know I, but now we know I am this person, I am this body. So I am sitting, I am talking, I am thinking, I am listening. All these are upadis, adjunct things that we superimpose upon this I. But what is this I, this fundamental basis of all experience, the reality of the knower? That is what we're investigating. So part of the question was about attending to the feeling I. What was it? There was another description. What was that other description, Shalini?
Yes. One was the mere feeling of I can be an experience where there is no sharpness of attention, but a more diffuse attention. There is another practice where attention makes a greater effort to see the experiencer, the seer, that elusive I, and focuses there.
Yeah, I don't understand exactly. I mean, again, no words are adequate. When we say a diffuse awareness, I can see what that could mean. That is, what we are attending to is not an object. But at the same time, that is, I is that space of awareness in which everything else appears. So it's not one particular point not one particular object in that field of awareness that we're attending to. We're attending to the field of awareness itself, so to speak. So in that sense, it's diffuse. But at the same time, we are focusing only on that. And we are focusing so sharply on this fundamental awareness I am, but the attention is withdrawn from everything else. So we each need to understand, that is, Bhagavan has expressed it in certain words. We need to think carefully about the words he's using, and it needs to be clear to us. If we've really understood what this practice is, there will be no doubt about it. If we are still trying to understand what the practice is, that means we still haven't really understood what we are. We at least need to have a clear understanding of what we are and what we are not. We are not any object. We are not this body. We're not the mind. We're not the thought. We're not any feelings. We are the, so to speak, the screen on which all these pictures are projected. But whatever words we use are inadequate. The words are all pointers. We each have to make sense of these pointers. We each have to recognize clearly what is being pointed at. And it's not something difficult. It's not something elusive. It's the one thing that we all know more clearly than anything else, I. So we confuse ourselves with all our... the trouble is, because our mind has been going outwards and diffused all over the world, I mean, we've been scattering our attention on a multitude of objects. We've lost that clarity. So we can regain that clarity by looking within more and more. Looking within doesn't mean looking within at thoughts or feelings, anything. They're all external. Looking within means looking at ourself alone, looking at I alone. So to understand this, we each need to understand it for ourselves. It's not difficult, but it requires a certain clarity, a certain not just seeing the words, but seeing beyond the words, seeing what the words are pointing at. No words will be adequate, but the words are sufficient to point us in the right direction if we understand them correctly.
Yes, thank you, Michael. I was the one who put this question, and perhaps what I was trying to transmit, to say, is that sometimes the practice is like staying in my own existence.
Yes, your own being.
My own, yes.
Yeah.
And only that, but to stay there second by second, well, it's not.
It requires great love. We all fail to stay there moment to moment. I mean, we may hold on to it for a few moments and then it slips, and we have to bring it back again.
Perhaps
that's why constant practice is necessary.
Perhaps that was I was trying to say that it goes away, but saying that it is elusive.
Yes, but what goes away is not I. What goes away is our attention. Our attention goes away towards other things.
Okay. Yes, that's true.
So it's not I never slips away, because who is it who knows all these other things? That's why Bhagavan gave one very useful clue given to us by Bhagavan is to whom. Whatever we may be aware of, to whom does this appear? That's a very, if we understand it correctly, that's a very powerful pointer, pointing our attention back to ourselves. So we are not seeking to know any known thing. We are seeking to know the reality of the knower.
Yes. It's like the awakening is once and forever. It seems to me, for so many things you tell, that perhaps we think there is a process, no, a practice, a process in this, but the awakening is once and forever.
Yes, because the process, the practice, is for ego. The awakening is the dissolution of ego. So either ego is there or it's not. I mean, once ego is destroyed, it's completely destroyed. It is destroyed so completely, not only at the moment of dissolution, it's destroyed for all time, all eternity. I mean, beyond time. It'll be clear when it is destroyed, it'll be clear that it was never there in the first place.
Yes, I understand. Yes. Okay. Thank you so much.
Yes. Bhagavan says in the first verse of our Atma-vichara that it's like waking up from a dream of wandering all over the world. But whereas that's true up to a certain point, but whereas waking up from a dream, there's the I that was experiencing the dream has woken up from it and still has a recollection of that. But this is even more radical than that, because the I ceases to exist forever. I mean, there never was such an I. As he says in verse 17 of Upadesha Undiya, if one investigates the form or the nature of the mind without forgetting, it will be clear that there's no such thing as mind at all. So it's not a matter of there's an ego and you destroy it. It's like if you see a rope and mistake it to be a snake, the only way to kill the snake is to look at it very carefully. If you look at it very carefully, the snake disappears. But when the snake disappears, it disappears with the clear awareness there never was a snake there in the first place. What seemed to be a snake was always only a rope.
There is a feeling that when the mind stays looking, or I don't know how to say it, but when I stay there looking at myself, my own being, myself, there is like silence. I don't know how to explain it. It's okay. It's
Yes,
like
yes, because the silence Bhagavan talks about is not a temporary silence, it's the eternal silence. Silence is the nature of being. Because being is never, in pure being, there's no rising, there's no activity of any sort, no change of any sort. So when Bhagavan talks about silence, that silence is a description of the nature of being. So that silence is ever present. However much chaos our mind may be in, that silence is ever shining as the screen on which all this chaos is appearing.
okay.
So we're not just looking for temporary periods of quietness of mind. We are trying to look for that silence which is eternal and which is our own being.
Okay. Yes. Thank you so much.
Right.
Om Namo Bhagavate Śrī Aruṇācala.
We have another 6 questions. Yeah, today we have a lot of questions. Just one thing, because this is coming up again and again. Well, it always does, because it's really the most difficult thing, and however easy it may seem to be. I don't know if it's helpful, as you were saying, because there's something which we're going to do in the face-to-face as well, and we talked about this quite a bit. As you were saying, the field of awareness, we are always, whenever we can never leave the field of awareness. Right now, here and now, as far as the eye can see, as far as I can think, as far as I can smell, taste, anything, this is in the field of awareness. I can never step outside it. The field of consciousness, we can never kind of go outside. So
We are that.
We are that. We can never escape it. And I think just the immediacy of that awareness is, I think, where it is something which we kind of lose track of, that here and now, this entire space and time, this entire space, the whole world appearing to me right now, this is the space of awareness, the field of awareness here and now. And but usually, we're thinking about things, we're dividing up the world, this object, that object, and so on and so forth, and concepts and words. But this immediately is what it is. And the more in that, the more we simply recognize the immediacy, and we were talking about this in the satsang, that, it's just this here and now, the entirety. I mean, this space is the space of awareness. This time is the time of awareness. We can never step outside our awareness. That's all that we really are. But the more and more we kind of immerse ourselves in that awareness, the more we're aware of of awareness, the more we merge in it, the more there is this kind of sense of enormous spacious awareness. I don't know how else to put it. This clarity and space and kind of the nebulousness. There's nothing solid, no thing anymore. And I think that's probably what the diffuse attention. Sometimes I think, I've been to think that this somehow, at least I found it kind of helpful, because just that immediately, what is this? What is the self? What is it that we're talking about? What are we investigating? Is just my awareness here and now, in which everything appears. And let's get on with it.
But Bhagavan uses the analogy of the cinema screen. That is such an apt analogy, because we go to a cinema, we sit there for 2 or 3 hours looking at the screen, but in a certain sense, we never see the screen, even though we're never seeing anything other than the screen, because we are more interested in the pictures. But the pictures are not at all concealing the screen. It's only because they capture our attention. So we overlook the screen, which is ever present there. Likewise, because our attention is captured by all these phenomena that appear in awareness, we overlook the awareness in which they appear. In which, to which, by which, for which. I mean, that awareness is it is the ground, the adhara, the adhisthana, whatever word we use. And we are that. But we overlook that and identify ourselves with one of the pictures. And so we end up with so much confusion.
That screen is the screen of awareness in which this entire world, including this body, mind, senses, and everything else, including Michael and Zoom, appear.
Everything.
Everything appear. So it's the screen of awareness, the screen of my own awareness in which the world appears.
Yeah.
Now, next one.
My own awareness, the only awareness.
Yes, exactly. That's all there is, the awareness.
Yes.
I hope this is helpful because really, otherwise I'm sure that half the people who go to Ramana ashram and all that, I mean, we all have this devotion, but I think to actually get to grips with it is not, I mean, to really being to understand, and I'm very sympathetic to what Leah has to say. I think everybody faces this issue. So, okay. The next one is...
This is where grace is so important, because grace gives the clarity to see this. That grace is that clarity.
Thank you, Michael. Next question. In relation to the text you just quoted, the ego wants to survive and our true self needs to surrender and die.
No.
No. The ego needs to surrender and die.
Yeah, it's ego that needs to surrender and die.
Okay, so I'm going
and when ego dies, what remains, that is our true self. That is what we actually are.
So I'm going to just re-say this in the way it's probably meant. In relation to the text you've just quoted, the ego wants to survive, but it really needs to surrender and die. And by grace, that surrender involves being zombified, abducted, like some young girl, and murdered. Okay. Wow, sounds like a Saturday night on Netflix. It's funny to think how conventional ears might be appalled by such teachings, considering most don't think of grace as a serial killer. Bhagwan's teachings certainly are a challenge to our ordinary small minds, though we can understand this in principle. The text points at something normally associated with the form of murderous evil. Unconventionally, the text is suggesting that there is such a thing as the benevolent killing when the murderer in question is grace, perhaps particularly challenging to a Western psyche.
Yes, it all depends on how we look at it. If we understand that Bhagavan talks in a later verse towards the end of Aruṇācala Padigam, he talks of kolamale kolum, killing without killing. This Aruṇācala will kill us without killing. That is, it will kill ego, what we mistake ourselves to be. It will kill the false identification without killing what we actually are, because what we actually are can never be killed. So, and regarding the analogy of a girl being abducted, she's not being abducted to be, we shouldn't mix up the metaphors. That is, she is being abducted, and what she's praying for is for, I spoke earlier about that verse 9 of Aksharamla, in which Bhagavan said, if you do not unite with me, destroying me now is this manliness. They're destroying, Murugan explains, but in the analogy, that is, the destruction means the destruction of the jivatvam. That is the virginity of the girl in question. That is, the girl had been abducted, and she now wants to unite with her Lord. So he has to unite with her and destroy her virginity. Her virginity means her jivatvam, her individuality. Then only she becomes one with him. So the destruction not of the girl, destruction of her virginity, so that she becomes one with the Lord. So her virginity means her separate existence, her individuality. So in order to become one with God, the reality, Aruṇācala, we need to lose our separate existence. Because the truth is, we are always one with that, but we seem to be different only because we've risen as ego. So destruction of ego is analogous to the destruction of the virginity, and then the girl becomes one with the Lord. And then the marriage is, the divine marriage is consummated.
The next question is, could you ask Michael what he thinks about the biblical instruction not to worship idols?
Yes, I think we are all idol worshippers. We've set up this body, this person we take ourselves to be. We are worshipping this idol as if it were I. When Bhagavan was questioned about, is it right to worship idols? In fact, some Muslim, but not with an intention to criticize, but with an intention to understand, asked Bhagavan, is it not wrong to worship idols? Bhagavan said, if you first give up worshipping idols yourself, then you can criticize other idol worship. And that Muslim said, no, Bhagavan, I'm a Muslim. We never worship idols. And Bhagavan said, what are you doing every day? You get up in the morning, you give bath, you may put some scents on, you put on nice clothing, you brush your hair, you make yourself look nice, and you offer yourself some very tasty food. You take all that. But why? Because you take this body to be I. Exactly the same is happening in the temple. They give the god an abhishekam, they put on nice clothes and garlands and everything, and they offer nice food. Just as if God came to your house, how would you treat God? You would welcome him, you would give him water for a bath, you would offer him nice fresh clothes to wear, you'll put garlands on him, you'd offer him food. They are treating that idol as if it is God, just like you are treating this body as if it is I. So long as we mistake ourselves to be a form, we cannot conceive of God as formless. Later, after doing this Patigam, the next work we'll do is Ashtakam, and there Bhagavan says, he talks about this worship of form. That is, so long as we take ourselves to be a form, we cannot but take God to be a form. Even if we say, no, God is formless, that is a certain idea we have of God. Every idea is a mental form. So even the concept of a formless God is itself a form. It's a mental form. It's an idea. So we cannot know God as formless so long as we do not know ourselves as formless. In order to know God as formless, we need to know ourselves as formless. Because so long as we mistake ourselves to be a form, God, we cannot conceive of God as anything but a form. It may be a subtle form, it may be some concept, God is formless, but that itself is a form. That's why he says in verse 4 of Uludunapadu, Uruvam Tanayin Ulhu Paramatran. If oneself is a form, God and the world will be likewise. If oneself is not a form, who can see their forms and how? So the whole problem is not seeing God as a form. The root problem is seeing ourselves as a form. And when we see ourselves as a form, however much we try to conceive of God as formless, we can never succeed in doing so, because our very idea of a formless God is itself a form. And those who worship God in form, those who knowingly worship God in form, in the form of a temple vigraha, an idol, they don't think God is limited to that form. They think God has come in that form, but they don't think God is just limited to that form. They understand that God is the omnipresent, eternal reality. But for the sake of the worshipper, a limited view of the worshipper, he has appeared in that form in order to accept the worship of the worshipper.
The next question is, I'm having trouble, I'm having trouble on the relative level involving the false notion of multiple jivas with the concept that God selects karma for spiritual development when one considers the lives of people who commit great evil or those who suffer great torment and hopelessness. Is there any view to help with the seeming unfairness of life when considering these people's lives?
It seems unfair to us because of our limited view. But whatever we experience in this life is not the fruit or the result of any action we've done in this life. It is the fruit of actions we've done in previous lives. So since we cannot see our previous lives or see the previous lives of others, we think, why should this person suffer? Sometimes we see very good people suffering in poverty or with bereavement and so many difficulties. But we see people who are clearly very selfish, arrogant, egotistical. They seem to have all the good things of life. They have wealth, they have power, they have this, they have that, they have name, fame. They may even have good, they physically have good looks, and they have everything that one could ask for. But they're such wicked people. So how is it fair? But some good people are suffering, and some bad people are seemingly having everything, everything one would want. But we are viewing it only from a narrow perspective of this one lifetime. That is, we're only aware of ourselves in this one life, of ourselves having this one lifetime, and we're aware of others having one lifetime. But the truth is, we've all been here many times before. Whatever we experience is the result of our past actions. In some other religions, for example, in Christianity, for example, they may say, oh, no, we don't believe in the law of karma. But the law of karma is clearly there, implied in the Bible, because I don't know whether it was Christ or someone else said, as you sow, so you shall reap. If that is true, if we have to reap as we have sown, it is logical to infer that as we reap, so we have sown. So if whatever we experience now is the result of our past karmas, not in this life, but in some previous life. Why? But it's not just a random, it's not just random fruit of past karma. The karma, as Bhagavan says in the first verse of Upadeshundya, karma giving fruit is by the ordainment of God. So God is the one who allots the fruit of our past karmas. We have done so many karmas in the past, but we haven't yet experienced the fruit of. They are stored in what is called sanchita. Sanchita simply means a heap or pile. That is it's a collective name for the fruits of our past karmas, but we haven't yet experienced. So that's a vast heap. From that vast heap, God selects in each lifetime those fruit which will be most conducive to our spiritual development. So it may seem to us, oh, why this person has to suffer so much? But because we are seeing only the narrow picture, we don't see the broader picture. God alone knows what fruit will be most conducive to our spiritual development. I mean, what fruit for us to experience will be most conducive to our spiritual development in this lifetime. So if we then oh, God is being very unfair, why he gives suffering to good people and he gives all these pleasures to the bad people, we are considering ourselves to be wiser than God, which is absurd. We have such a limited view. How can we judge? God is infinite, so his view is infinite. He knows what is best. And another thing is, though it may seem that someone is enjoying all the good things of life, they have money, they have name, they have fame, they have wealth, they have this. If we believe that person is happy, we are mistaken, because the more people have these things, typically, the more people have, the more they want. So actually, there's no one as dissatisfied as those who are very rich, very powerful and everything. You can see from their actions how they're not satisfied. There are some people who in this world who have hundreds of billions of dollars, but they're still trying to get more money. They're still trying to get more power. So all these so-called good things of life do not give satisfaction. Sometimes you see people who have nothing, who live life of extreme hardship and face so many difficulties, but inwardly they're such calm, peaceful, smiling people.
Thank you, Michael.
And by God, we simply mean this vast field of awareness in which this entire world is fabricated.
Yes, and God does all this allotting of karma without actually doing anything, just by being as he is. Because he is that infinite love, everything happens automatically as it should happen. So God does everything without ever doing anything. So again, it's beyond the grasping power of our finite mind. But we think we're wise enough to sit in judgment on God and say God's not doing a good job, he's not doing his job properly.
It's already 5 o'clock here. There are 3, 4 questions. I think we could do it quickly.
Okay.
So one is, can we say that Atma-vichara is aimed at our attention rather than our intellect?
Yeah, I mean, it's our attention, it's the tool we have to use. We have to focus our attention on ourselves. And what is attention? Attention is nothing but our awareness. It's a focusing of our awareness. That is, when we rise as ego, we project all this multiplicity, and we have that ability to focus on this thing or that thing. But it's only it's just attention is essentially just awareness, but it's a focused awareness. So that is the basic tool of Atma-vichara. But intellect also has a part, because intellect is the discriminating, the discerning, the distinguishing ability. So if we cannot distinguish ourselves from all the things we mistake ourselves to be, we cannot. We don't know what to attend to. So the intellect also has a role in discerning, in distinguishing what we actually are. We are not any of these objects, any of these phenomena. We are that awareness to which all these appear. So the basic tool is attention, but the intellect has to we can't avoid using if we don't use our intellect, if we don't use our power of discernment, our power of distinguishing, we won't know what to focus our attention on.
Beautiful. Thank you, Michael.
But we also can't, though we use terms like attention, intellect, all these things, these are not compartmentalized. These are different functions of the same one mind. So they're not watertight compartments. They all work in conjunction.
Yes, makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
Next question. In what ways does Michael disagree with panpsychism?
Panpsychism according to panpsychism, everything is aware. There's awareness in all objects. As with most of Western philosophy and this modern so-called science of consciousness, they fail to make a simple distinction. That simple distinction is what in Advaita we call drik drisya viveka, distinguishing the seer from the seen, the knower from the known. And in that's the very basis of Sankhya philosophy that distinguishes Purusha from Prakriti. Prakriti, all phenomena are Prakriti, including the mind, the thoughts, everything is all Prakriti. Purusha is just consciousness. Why should we make this distinction? For a very simple reason. Phenomena appear and disappear in awareness. So there's no phenomenon that is constantly present in awareness. Since phenomena appear and disappear in awareness, awareness must be something other than those phenomena that appear and disappear in it. Because if any particular phenomenon was awareness, when that phenomenon disappears, awareness should also disappear, but it doesn't. Awareness is constant. So clearly awareness is something distinct from all phenomena. This is a basic insight of in Indian philosophy that is the basis of not only of Advaita, it's the basis of Sankhya, it's the basis of most schools of Buddhism, most Indian systems of philosophy accept this basic distinction between the knower and the known. This somehow in Western philosophy, they fail to make this distinction. So this modern idea of panpsychism, or even there may be ancient forms of panpsychism also, they're failing to make that distinction. They're looking for consciousness outside. They're looking for consciousness among the objects of consciousness. Where in the brain is consciousness? Some neuroscientists are trying to detect where in the brain is consciousness. The panpsychists are trying to, there are two types of panpsychists. I've forgotten what they're called. Some of them say every individual particle has some level of consciousness. And there's others that say the whole universe is conscious. So they're different forms, but they're looking for consciousness outside. Consciousness is not any object of awareness. It is awareness itself. Awareness is distinct from all objects of awareness. So like all these things, they're looking in the wrong direction. They're trying to find consciousness outside themselves instead of looking within. Who is conscious? I am conscious. Who am I? That is what we should be investigating. Not looking for ourselves outside.
The last question, Michael. Do apparent individuals like Bhagwan take birth in worlds such as this one in order to quell the onslaught of duality?
There are so many different ways of explaining these things. There's the idea of avatar. Avatar is God descending down in, but ultimately, it all depends on how we view the world. According to Bhagavan's teaching, the whole world is nothing but a dream. So the analogy he gave sometime to explain the appearance of the guru is he used the analogy of the lion that appears in the elephant's dream. Elephants are not afraid of anything except lions. And there's a popular belief that elephants are so afraid of lions that if a lion appears in an elephant's dream, the shock of seeing a lion will cause the elephant to wake up. So based on this belief, it is said, the guru is like the lion that appears in the elephant's dream. The lion that appears in the elephant's dream is unreal, but it brings about a real awakening. Likewise, the name and form of guru is unreal, but it brings about the real awakening. But that isn't to say guru is unreal. The name and form in which guru appears is unreal. But guru alone is what is real. Guru is our own self, our own reality. So guru alone is real, but the name and form in which guru appears is unreal, like all phenomena. The reality of guru is none other than God. As Bhagavan says in the first sentence of the 12th paragraph of Nana, Kadavulam Guruvum Unmail Verala. God and Guru are in truth not other. And as he often said, God, Guru, and Self are one and the same. That is, what appears outwardly as God or as Guru is nothing but our own self. Our own self means in the sense of our own reality, what we actually are. Because we mistake ourselves to be a body, our own reality appears outwardly in the form of another body like ours, in order to tell us to turn within. So we shouldn't conclude that Guru is unreal. The name and form of Guru is as unreal as all other names and forms. It seems real so long as we take ourselves to be this name and form. But it's not the ultimate reality. The ultimate reality is what Guru actually is, which is our own self. Bhagavan explained the Christian concept of the Trinity, 3 persons in one God. Bhagavan explained it very simply. God the Father is Ishvara. God the Son is Guru. And God the Holy Spirit is Atma-Swarupa. All are one. But when we look outwards, they seem to be separate. And Bhagavan also said, because we're dissatisfied with our life in this world, we pray to God. And when first we pray to God asking for this and that, but slowly due to our devotion to God, our mind is purified. And then we begin to understand God, who is giving all these things, are greater than all the things I asked for. So rather than asking for all these petty gifts from God, I should ask for God himself. I should seek God alone, not to gain anything from God, but just for his own sake. So then the Kamya Bhakti becomes Nishkamya Bhakti. And when the Nishkamya Bhakti matures, then the God appears in the form of Guru to say the God you are seeking is your own reality. You can know him only by turning within. So then the Anya Bhava, the attitude that God is something other than ourselves, is replaced by the Ananya Bhava, the attitude that God is ourself. And then we meditate on nothing other than ourselves. Ananya means not other. So Ananya Bhava means meditating on what is not other than oneself, with the understanding that he is I. That's what Bhagavan talks about in verse 8 of Upadesha Undiyā. But it's only because God appears in the form of Guru to tell us that what he actually is ourself. And then we turn within, and then we realize that what appeared outwardly as God, later appeared outwardly as Guru, is nothing but our own reality.
Thank you, Michael.
Michael, can you please touch upon this last summa iru in the deepest context, because people
You asked earlier about nanudiyada ulinile.
Yes.
That is what summa iru means. Summa iru means just be. Being is our very nature. There is not a moment when we are not. But why summa iru? Summa means merely just be. That implies be without rising. So that nanudiyada ulanile, state in which I is without rising, or the I not rising being state, that is sumeru, just being. And in order to just be, we need to attend to ourselves, as he implies in the second sentence of verse 27. How to, without investigating the place where I rises, how to attain the annihilation of oneself in which I does not rise. Investigating the place where I rises means investigating our being, because the rising is from what actually exists is our being. The rising is from that being. That is, in sleep, what exists only is our being. The Satchit, the being awareness. From that we rise as ego. So investigating the place from which I rises is investigating our own being. And only by investigating our being will we be as we actually are. Just be. That's what Bhagavan I referred just before to verse 8 of Upadesha Undiyā, where Bhagavan says, rather than anya bhava, that is meditating on God as if he was something other than oneself, ananya bhava, meditating on nothing other than oneself with the understanding that he is I, avanaham ananya bhavam, that is anaitanamutam, that is the best among all. And then in the next verse he says, bhava balatinal, by the strength of meditation, that implies by the strength of that ananya bhava, in other words, by the strength of self-attentiveness, bhavana tita satbhava tu iritale, being in satbhava, in the state of being which transcends bhavana. That implies transcends meditation in the sense of mental activity. So just being in that state of being, that is parabhakti tattva. But how to be in that state of being? Only by the bhava balatinal, only by the strength of meditation, by the strength of the ananya bhava. In other words, by the strength of self-attentiveness. So the more we attend to ourselves, the more we subside. And by subsiding, we remain in our state of being. And being in that state, that is being, having subsided in the place from which we rose, udita idatil odungi iratal, as he says in the next verse, verse 10, that is karma and bhakti, that is yoga and jnana. So the sum and substance of all spiritual paths is just subsiding and being as we actually are. And we can subside and be as we actually are only by the strength of self-attentiveness. So self-attentiveness is the key to sumeirpadu, just being. Is that clear?
Yes, Michael. The first thought, the body is the first thought.
No. Who is it who says, I am this body? To whom does this body appear? Well, body is an object. It's a second or third person.
When
The
we
first
wake up,
person is ego, the one who is aware of itself as I am this body.
no, I'm just trying to correlate this. Nanudiyadu ullanilai. Okay, from ordinary human being like us, in the deep sleep, Raghu is not there. 100% it's gone. The world is
Yeah.
gone. The God is gone.
Yeah.
Everything is gone. Yet awareness experiences itself as
Yeah.
awareness.
Why is Raghu gone? Why is the world
Ego.
gone? Because ego is gone.
Hmm.
So we need to distinguish ego from the body, but ego is not the body. I see you also referred earlier to verse 24 of Uludunapadu. Jada Urulnanenadu. This insentient body does not say I. In other words, the insentient body is not aware I.
But why I'm saying this,
Satchitudiyadu. This ego is neither the body nor is it Satchit. It's a spurious I that rises as the extent of a body. So it limits itself as the body. So this ego is the first thought.
The thing is, like the moment the eyes are open, when we wake up in the morning, the moment we all naturally the biological thing, the first thing we experience is this body, and we get caught up in all the memory.
Yes, but who experiences this body?
The seer is gone. The seer became the ego now.
Yeah. But what experiences the body is ego. It experiences the body as I am this body. But ego is distinct from the body. Though it mistakes itself to be the body, ego is not the body. It is the I that is aware of itself as I am this body. So ego is the first thought, the thought called I. The body is the second thought.
Thank you, Michael, for the deepest insight. I mean, I will just allow this to settle in, continue my practice, and I will come back to you once it matures.
But this is not, I haven't said anything. I'm just pointing out what Bhagavan has said.
Because
so all thanks to Bhagavan.
Because in the chat, all these messages comes like awareness is like slowly immersing the body in a pool of water, and he goes on. Andrew is explaining that it's like watching a movie, but then the first thing is the body itself is a thought.
Yes.
It just goes beyond.
All this movie and everything, that's not awareness. That's the object of awareness.
Yes.
To whom do all these things appear? So awareness can never be an object of awareness.
True. Thank you, Michael. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Namo Bhagavate Śrī Aruṇācala Ramanaya.
Yes.
And the awareness is called self because it is self-aware.
Yes, because it is I.
That's all that we really
The natural name of awareness is I. Because awareness is always aware of itself.
Yeah.
We can't be aware of anything else without first being... We can't be aware without being aware, but we are aware. So being aware of anything implies being aware of ourselves.
And so that's the first thing we make into an object. The I, the first person.
Yes.
We can identify.
Well, no, I is not an object. I identifies itself in the object. I is the subject. The subject can never be an object. Yeah, that is the first thought. Exactly.
Yes, that's the first thought. That is, the subject is...
Yeah.
Anyway, now I think we need to get on with it now.
Now we need Sumayurapadu.
Yes, I think, I think we can all have quiet minds now for the rest of the day and enjoy the sunshine. And which in Spain you have, but in England it's very, very problematic. Yep. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Śrī Ramanaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Śrī Ramanaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Śrī Ramanaya.